when someone comes to mind, just ping them. Shoot them a text, a voice note, a little video from your phone, or a quick email. Because if someone popped up in your mind, that's enough reason to ping them. Because whatever reminded you of them is the reason to ping them. As in, maybe you just talked with one of their clients, or you just booked a flight to their city, or maybe they're into tech or books or whatever, and you got a new book and you think, hey, I should tell them about this book. I'm enjoying it. They might as well. And by pinging someone when they're top of mind like that, you maintain a relationship over time instead of only pinging them when you need something. By staying top of mind and in touch, opportunities just come out of the woodwork. So it's a great way to maintain relationships over time. And I'll be finishing brushing my teeth in the morning and realize I've texted two or three people already just to check in. So it's a great way to maintain relationships over time.
Today's guest is Charles Byrd. Charles' expertise comes from bringing together different audiences to create what are called joint ventures. In this episode, we cover what a joint venture is, how to use them to help grow your business, and his excellent advice on how to start your very first business. But first, let me read his introduction. Charles Byrd is a Silicon Valley veteran turned entrepreneur, renowned for his expertise in joint ventures or JV partnerships. As the founder of Pure JV, he empowers course creators, coaches, and consultants to generate dependable revenue through strategic collaborations. His background includes tenure as a director of Cadence Design Systems, a billion-dollar software company, where he honed his skills in project management and systems optimization. After transitioning from corporate life, Charles developed a successful online productivity course and mastered JV marketing to promote it. He now teaches others how to build and manage JV partnerships systematically, emphasizing the importance of structured processes and relationship building. Charles Byrd, so great to see you again. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Matt, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're a successful entrepreneur, but I'm guessing that you didn't always start out like that. So let's go back to the early days when you had a corporate job, or what did you do before you got into the entrepreneurial field?
Yeah, so I worked in the Silicon Valley for 15 years. So this is coming out of school with a business degree, got a job for a Silicon Valley company on their help desk doing tech support, and then over the years, project management, program management, founded my own department, ended up as a director at that company. And so that's basically hanging out here in the Bay Area. But kind of that transition, I'd always wanted to start a company. I'd read entrepreneur books, although they felt like they were for other people. It didn't really sink in that I could do that until one of my friends from college, him and his wife, he was a nurse, him and his wife started their first company and then their second company and third company. And by the time they're buying their fifth building in San Francisco, I was like, well, if he can do it, I think I can do it too, because we're friends and peers. And another catalyst that kind of pushed that forward, I would try to do side gigs, getting business ideas up and going while working in corporate. And I found that to be very challenging because when you're working all day, it only leaves nights and weekends, and you tend to not have a crazy amount of energy. So a catalyst was I got a call from my mom, and she had that serious tone in her voice. So I thought one of the kids she adopted from Sierra Leone were having trouble in school or something, but it wasn't that. She'd been in a minor car accident the day before, thinking she was pressing on the brake, but wasn't, hitting the car in front of her. And then that day, she was physically reaching for a fork and kept missing it by 6 inches. Took her to the
Oof.
hospital, found she had two stage 4 brain tumors, and I could barely walk in the house to tell my family this news. And we piled in the car and went to be with her going into brain surgery that night, same night, and went to where she lived in Central California and basically took care of her for about a year. And my mom lived a year to the day from when I got that call. And what it crystallized for me is that life's short. If there's something you want to achieve, if there's an impact you want to make in the world, if there's a quality of life you want for you and your family, today is all we actually have. And so that realization gave me basically the confidence to say, hey, corporate's been good for me, and now it's time for the next chapter. And when I committed to that path, because my dad was like, go get another job. And I'm like, no. So when I committed to that path, I had this piece of wood made. It says, I can, I will, end of story. This is like burn the boats and figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. And I'll tell you, when you do commit to something and you're not hedging your bets with this or that or the other thing, the path forms in front of you. You figure it out. So basically, my first product coming into the entrepreneur space was a low cost productivity course. It was brand new to entrepreneurship, very skilled in what I was good at, but I was new to business like that. So basically started going to a lot of events and connecting with people online and quickly found my new peer group of entrepreneurs already had my ideal clients in their communities. So started setting up presentations to other people's audiences, delivering a high value training and offering the deeper dive course and started
I'm
growing the
gonna
list.
I'm gonna pause you right there because that's the really good part, and we'll get to that. But I want to go back to the entrepreneurial pain a little bit.
Oh,
So
sure.
you leave your corporate job, you start this business. How did you know what to even sell? I mean, you had
Okay.
a productivity
So,
course, but for an entrepreneur out there who's struggling, like I know I should and want to go into business, how do you help them do that?
all right. Well, I'll say this isn't the world's most scientific approach, but it is the one I took. And that is, I made a list of things I was good at or had interest in. So, a range of topics. I had like 40 things on this list. And then I looked at the list and I'm like, what are you actually good at? Like, very good at. And the list shrank to like 12 topics. And then from there, I kind of looked at it through the lens of these topics or expertise. What's been one of the most beneficial or impactful things for me personally that I've gotten a lot of value out of? And that's how I picked the topic. I'm coming out of a technology background. I'm super into tech and tools and systems and productivity. And a tool that came out a million years ago called Evernote, which I'm sure you've heard of,
Oh, uh-huh.
I became quite proficient at using that. And so I was like, I could simply make a course teaching people my system for using that tool. And really, when I went to chat with my friends who had those successful businesses, they were physical products and like wooden watches and sunglasses and things like that. And I was like, how do I get into this wooden product game? And they're like, don't. You should not deal with sourcing things from other countries and assembling and shipping. They're like, you should go into digital products. And so I was like, cool, now I've got this figured out. I'm an expert at this topic. I'd already been doing trainings and things like that in the corporate world. So it was simply, hey, let me put together this product. So for newer people, there's a few ways to go about it. I'm not recommending people run out and create courses, although that is one of the pathways. Probably one of the best things to consider based on what you're good at is what could you consult someone through? And then you can get either one or a handful of folks that you help for very low cost just to get the reps and get the clarity of what are the steps you're actually walking them through and what questions are they asking. And basically, you're piloting this while starting to create a process to support people with it. And one other point I'll throw in, because I'm sure you have more to ask, but when you are considering doing consulting, and in the beginning, you're just going to be figuring different things out, but I would highly encourage you over time to not rent out your brain. You want to rent out, like, people can hire you for a process that you're walking them through because if you hire me, Matt, and I help you with one topic, and then the next person hires me to help with another topic, I'm developing no system around that versus here's a front end of where I can serve someone and here's what they'll get on the back end. So you can replicate it and turn it into a machine. And that's what you get known for. The person who's known for a lot of things is known for nothing. You want one front door on your house, and once they're inside, maybe you show them a few other rooms. But point being, you want to standardize a work process, a signature process you can take people through in a highly repeatable way.
That's gold. That's really good. Can you expand on that a little bit if somebody doesn't really understand what you're talking about? Do you have
Sure.
an example? If not, I have one that may work.
Yeah, I have plenty of examples. So, well, I'll use a very recent example because it will kind of paint a picture. So, I have a very refined process for how I serve and support entrepreneurs that helps you systematically get in front of more of your ideal clients. It's a end-to-end 8-week process. It's highly refined because I've been doing it now for 10 years. I recently took on a new client who happens to be a billionaire. So I was excited to land a billionaire because why not? But he doesn't fall in my typical process. Now, I made a conscious choice to take him on as a client, but I'm having to do dramatically more work than I would have for one of my regular clients because when you have a super defined system and parts of it you're having your team help with, and for you, you're just doing the same things, applying it to different clients. So it almost becomes effortless because you get so damn good at it. Where this new project, which I'm excited to be part of, it's more them renting my brain and connections instead of following my system. So it's requiring a lot more time and effort. I have another client who I've taught this lesson to because every client got a custom scope of work and a custom proposal, and different members of his team would help with different specific things. And there is zero way to scale that. All that does is create barriers at every point where if he can standardize a process of here's how we intake a client, here's the options they can choose from, here's our process to fulfill for them, and it's the same every time. It doesn't mean, like in my case, working with clients, maybe you have a, what's called high ticket, but an expensive consulting offer, or maybe you have a $200 Evernote course. You can still go through my exact same process. It's just the strategies that I'm applying with you are different based on your market and model, but I'm going through the same process with every client. So
Mhm.
it makes it extraordinarily easy. Now, how do you create this process? Well, you start with one or two or three clients and you're figuring out what their pain points are and the exact ways to overcome those specific challenges. And it's like when I would run a group program or something. I kid you not, my first live event, $5,000 event, this was like 7 or 8 years ago. All I had was an outline of topics. There was no content built out. It was just here's what I want to talk about. And turns out that worked. Even between like going from lunch to the next section, I'm like, okay, now we'll talk about this. And so then guess what? The next time I ran that, we already had the outline and a bunch of the content fleshed out because I delivered it. And then the next time I got more refined. By the 10th time you're doing it, and the 20th and the 50th, you have a beautiful machine because you continue refining and iterating every time. And you're getting paid the whole time from the beginning. You should always get paid to create your product.
That's really great. I don't know if you're a new entrepreneur trying to figure it out. What he said is so valuable. I want to share a story. One of my friends is Ivan Meisner or Dr. Meisner from BNI, and he has a saying that it's better to do one thing 1,000 times than 100 things 10 times. And he says it much more eloquently than that. But the idea is you get really good at doing the same thing over and over. And I love how you use the word iterate. I have a saying that It's to be great, you need to iterate. And what does that mean? It means figure it out, get one thing done, figure out what worked and what didn't, and then do it again and again. And that rotational energy is one of the most powerful things in life. If you think about your car, that tire rotates around a point. Helicopters can fly because they rotate around a point. A plane flies forward because it has propellers and they rotate around a point. And so, exactly what you're doing, you're rotating around one thing and it just creates this groove in the universe.
It definitely does. And it's simple things like, as you would know, but for your audience, I do a lot of connecting of people. So I get 12 to 20 intros and referrals per week. I'm sending out at least that many per week. And so when you're doing something that often, you want to refine and simplify and streamline how it's done. So everything from keyboard shortcuts that lays out an intro and you're just putting people's names in there and then recording a quick voice note. And so you standardize how you do things and streamline them. And the truth is, as I came into the online world and started doing what we call joint venture promotions, I systematized the process I was doing to sell and promote my own productivity course and got so good at that that other people were like, hey, how do you do this process of continually having other people promote you? And so I systematized that, and that became what my core offer that I serve people with is helping them with their strategy and helping put this system in place. It certainly doesn't happen overnight, but when you come into it with that goal in mind, it can come together quite quickly and you can be off and running faster than you think.
Where did you get the systemization mindset? Was it a book? Was it a philosophy or in your corporate job? And then what are you using nowadays to systematize it so that everybody's doing the same thing at the right time?
Yeah, so I've always had a deep interest in technology and productivity. Just like, I mean, if you looked at this desk, there's tech all over it. And I'm one of the only people on the planet that wears their Apple Vision Pro every day to plan their morning. So I just naturally like those things. And so then as I do something, it's always like, what's a easier or better way that could be accomplished? And as I experiment with different tools or apps or things like that, then it's like, oh, this one worked really good. And then you start sharing that with people and your clients. Like, here's how you do this thing way better. And like, wow, I never would have thought of that because most people aren't wired to think that way. So, what is your superpower that comes naturally to you that other people don't naturally think that way? Sometimes these skills are almost invisible to us because that's just how we think, where other people might go, damn, how did you get so good at XYZ? Those are the things you want to kind of look at. Hey, how could I turn this into a service to share with other people?
Hey, real quick, we're building a community of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. These are people just like you who want to start or grow their businesses and are ready to take the next step. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, sign up and join us today. Just out of curiosity, have you taken Dr. Gary Sanchez's Y.os?
I have, yes.
And what is yours? Is it Better Way?
Yeah, it's to find a better way and give people a trusted process to follow. So, yeah, it's
Well, I
pretty
think
on.
that's fascinating because the better way, you keep finding a better way to iterate and make it great. So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about joint ventures. When I first heard you were doing joint ventures and we were going to talk about it, I felt so intimidated because when I think of joint ventures, I think of you coming to the table with a great big pile of paperwork and me coming with a pile of paperwork from lawyers and all this stuff. But that's not what a joint venture is. And then I hear JV and I think junior varsity. And so it gets a little confusing here. So help us understand what's a joint venture because it's way simpler than I thought it was. And how are they used?
Yeah, great question. And when I worked in corporate America, I thought the same thing. I thought it was like two big companies getting married with their products and services and stuff, which those are a type of joint venture too. For the sake of this interview, there's four main types of joint ventures that I help people with. And On the lighter weight side of things, you could think of them as promotional partnerships. And so I'll give you a couple examples. Let's say, for example, you decide, hey, I want to create some type of consulting offer, or in your case, you're teaching paramedics and EMTs and things like that. So you have a course or a program. So the four main JV types, number one, presenting to other people's audiences. So this is looking at who already has your ideal client, or in your case, your ideal student, in their audience or community already. So in my case, teaching people about joint ventures, it's entrepreneur groups. So basically groups that already have your ideal folks. It's getting up and presenting to those groups, sharing something of value, much like you recently did a talk for a group we're both in, and it was so compelling, everyone ran out and bought tourniquet kits. I've got mine in the kitchen.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so that's a perfect example of it. Next would be referral partnerships. Now, anyone in business who gets referrals, you're typically getting those because you do good work. But I'm talking about systematizing the referrals. So they're coming in quite consistently or baked into someone else's customer journey where they're regularly referring you by default. So that's a referral partnership. There's something I call embedded partnerships. This is where your product, service, or messaging is inside of other people's offers. Those can be the gift that keeps on giving because you're making a single deal that represents ongoing lead flow, which is quite handy. So, as an example of that, let's say you bought a course or a program and it had, or let's say the listeners bought that on some health thing. And as a bonus in that course was your talk on safety and tourniquets. And then that led into your school to get EMT certified, as an example. The fourth type are social JVs, like this podcast. Being on a podcast or an interview, you're sharing your audience, you're bringing in an expert, which is value to them. The expert coming in, they're expanding awareness and growing their audience at the same time. And it's also a great way to relationship build, to tee up other types of partnerships or land clients or things like that. For people doing podcasts or interviews, the listeners are really the cherry on top. The real value is in the relationship building between the folks doing the interview, because that strengthens relationships. It's a perfect time for teeing up referrals or joint ventures, or where appropriate, one of you decides to hire the other. Like it's the relationship building that's the primary value.
I would agree with that. I just started the podcast, so I'm very new to it. And I have asked a lot of high net worth people if they would go have a cup of coffee with me, and they said no. But when I invite them on a podcast and put a camera in front of them and promote, somehow everybody says yes. And I get to pick their brain and I get to share it with the audience, but I'm growing probably as much or more than my audience because, like you said, I get to talk to people like you. And usually it's those 5 to 10 minutes before the podcast and maybe 5 minutes after the podcast where we make really deep connections. And so if you're a listener out there and you're thinking, should I do the podcast? Should I do a podcast? The answer is yes. I would really consider it if it adds value to your product and is not a distraction.
Yeah, and I'll point out that early on, I didn't technically have a podcast, but I would interview people and I'd post it on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. And what's interesting, you can get these pretty huge people on them because they're so used to being invited to podcasts. They don't tend to even check how many people listen to your podcast. Um,
No.
so it's more like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll do your show. And then you're able to build that relationship, and you're always looking for ways to provide value first. You never want to jump on a call and think, what's in it for me? It's listening and being of service. And that's what swings the doors open to all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I really like how you shared the four different types of joint ventures. If somebody is new and they're starting and they don't have much of an audience, Maybe you already covered it, but what other advice would you have for getting somebody on your show or connecting or adding that value to their world?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways to do it. When I was kind of coming up and figuring this out, I would go to a lot of events, in-person events like conferences, entrepreneur masterminds, because there's nothing better than meeting in person. That's how you and I met. We met in person. Another way to go about it is connecting with people online. Depending on the industry or market you're in, different platforms may be more prevalent, but early on, I decided to use my Facebook profile for some personal, but mostly professional. And I don't mean a business page. No one cares about those. I chose to use my personal profile that way because in the online world industry, lots of people use it that way. Not saying you need to run out and use it, but then there's different, in this example, Facebook groups or communities or WhatsApp groups, and so I would join a group on a topic that resonated, and the people in there were either ideal partners or clients. And if you want to do this social, if you're not ready to start flying around everywhere, just start liking people's posts and commenting and interacting, and then after you've done that for a little bit, you can private message someone about something they shared or share a resource with them and simply say, hey, I'd love our interactions here on in this group. And you could reference maybe a recent thing and then say, I'd love to get to know you better, up for jumping on a call to explore ways we may be able to support each other. I made all kinds of friends and connections both online and in person, simply following that kind of framework.
That's great. You mentioned that you were getting a lot of referrals. I don't remember the exact number that you said, but you're getting a lot of referrals per week. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so it's part of what I teach and help clients with, and that is basically connecting with people who have a lot of your ideal clients or connections and teeing up intros back and forth. Like I got off a call earlier today with a friend and client of mine, hadn't chatted with him in a little while, and we caught back up of what each other is up to and then just talked through who some good connections would be. I came up with four intros for him. He's got four or five for me. And then I'm like, hey, that was fun. You want to do this again in a month or two? And he's like, definitely. So it's kind of as easy as that. So when you're meeting with people, you're trying to consciously meet with people who have your ideal clients as their clients or in their networks or communities. And you're always leading with value first. Like I had just sent him a referral 2 weeks ago to someone who will be a huge partner for them, a company that helps people get loans. And what he does is help people fly first class leveraging credit card points. So those markets go together quite well. And so they're lining up a big deal. And, I'd helped him out a few weeks ago. So jumping on the call today, he was trying to help me out because I hooked him up with a great joint venture opportunity. So it kind of works like that.
Wow, that's great. I know that recently you've been studying AI, but you're also a people person. You're a super connector. So how are you going to deal with this intersection between people and AI? And I know a lot of people are worried about AI eliminating jobs and maybe some of these connections. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, I think it's all more of an opportunity in a number of ways. For one, leveraging AI to stay in touch and connect with people easier because we can use tools to help write things or create custom photos or images that someone you're reaching out to will resonate with. But then you can also go, okay, with all this technology flooding into the world, what's going to be more value or appreciated down the line? And that is human connection. So that's one of the reasons I do events where I'm bringing actual people together to spend time together and build strong relationships. So you can look at what a trend is bringing and look at, A, how can you benefit from it? How can you streamline how you're serving customers and however you're serving them by going through that customer journey and figuring out how you can leverage AI to give them better service while making your own job and life easier, and look at what opportunities does that create, such as putting on in-person events, because AI is not going to, you can't replicate that. Meeting people in person and going out to dinner and great conversations and things like that. So yeah, I have an event called Flow. It's all about deep relationship building to create deal flow. And our next event is June 19 through 21 in Cabo San Lucas. These are in general for 7, 8, and 9-figure folks. And then we've got another one in October in Austin. That's October 23 through 25. So those are a couple of the upcoming Flow events. And like one of my clients in there who actually is a member of the mastermind, he's landed 10 high ticket clients just from being part of the group, because that is the point of the group, is relationship building to create deal flow. And that's just in the last few months. So it's great to be not only around cool, interesting people that are out changing the world in their various markets, but also doing business and supporting each other and hiring each other and referring each other. It just creates a whole ecosystem of support.
Absolutely. There is something amazing when you get into a room with another person. I think we've lost some things doing all the webinars and Zoom calls and everything, but just being next to somebody, like when we had dinner, just getting to know you and your energy, there's something magical about that. And when you're around high level entrepreneurs, it's even more magical because you start looking for the synergy and these little synapses in the brain start firing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it raises the point too. You've probably heard the many time used phrase that you're the average of the people you spend the most time with, the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so always seeking to up level what rooms and communities you're in, so that your goal should be, it will sound funny, but it's true. You want to be the dumbest person in the room. Because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not going to grow anymore. You want to be around people taking things to the next level from where you are, so you can model it and see it and say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And how are they doing that? I'm going to kind of learn from them. And the level of conversations higher too. Like they're looking at the world from a more advanced vantage point, and we can always learn from that. And you can get that from, like, I was just listening to Peter Diamanda's podcast yesterday. Like, he brings on all these extraordinarily sharp people, and so you want that kind of influence because it betters you over time. You become a more advanced version of yourself as you're continuously learning and improving and then running out and implementing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know for a while. I mean, I'm in a group now where I'm probably the smallest fish in the pond, it feels like sometimes, but they're teaching me things that I would not normally do on my own, or I would not think that way normally. One of my favorite quotes is T. Harv Eker, and he said that when he was young, a very wealthy mentor of his dad said, Harv, if you don't have what you want, it's because there's something you don't know. And by being around successful people, they will help you find that missing piece of the puzzle to get where you want to be. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a fact that proximity and the relationships. And as you make friends with folks that are good at what they do, they introduce you to their other successful friends, and you just start building your own friend network of amazing people. And just as an example, this new client of mine who happens to be a billionaire, he emailed me yesterday, or I guess it was the day before. He's like, I'd love a connection to James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. And so I was like, all right, cool. Let's go connect him. So I went to Facebook and looked up James and found I have 50 common friends, like, Facebook friends. And so I pinged three of them. One of them is actually friends with James. And so I have a meeting with him to explain what this intro is about. That meeting's scheduled for Monday. So from getting that request, I think basically yesterday or Wednesday, within 3 or 4 days, I'll have brokered a warm intro between these two folks. And that's all through relationship building. The person who is teeing up the relationship, that intro, I met him 9 years ago and we did joint venture promotions then. So these seeds get planted and they last decades. So relationship building is one of your fastest ROI activities.
Yeah, I think it was Robert Kiyosaki who taught me that you're only as powerful as your network. And so that's like an X squared. So whatever the number is to the if you have 100 contacts versus 500 contacts, that's a super powerful network. And it sounds like you have a huge network. How many people do you think are in your network?
I don't really know, but thousands. Like if we open up my phone, there's probably 5,000 people in my contacts. And then, like, and these you could think of them as concentric layers. You have like your tight, close friends, then you have like industry acquaintances and peers. So like when you're in an industry for a long time and you go to a lot of events and groups, you just meet new people every time. And then you're seeing people you already know. So you're strengthening those relationships. And yeah, it becomes like a family reunion showing up at these different kinds of events of clients and friends and referral partners or people that are just members of the same groups or communities. And it's a lovely thing because you just have kind of extended family around, I guess.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Well, Charles, if somebody is interested in JVs or learning more about you, how can they find you?
Sure. My website is charlesbyrd.com, Byrd, and you can learn quite a bit about what I'm up to there and how I can serve and support. And then for my events and masterminds, the site for that is flowmastermind.us, as in US. So charlesbyrd.com and flowmastermind.us.
Great. Thank you. And finally, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share with the audience?
Sure. So I'll share one thought for you, and that is when it comes to relationship building, frequently that doesn't come naturally to people because you get very busy in your day and you're like, oh, someone might come to mind and you're like, well, I got to pay this bill or I've got to take care of this or that. I'll check in with them next week or whatever. And I would encourage you to flip the script on that a little bit. When someone comes to mind, just ping them, shoot them a text, a voice note, a little video from your phone, or a quick email. Because if someone popped up in your mind, that's enough reason to ping them. Because whatever reminded you of them is the reason to ping them. As in, maybe you just talked with one of their clients, or you just booked a flight to their city, or maybe they're into tech or books or whatever, and you got a new book and you think, hey, I should tell them about this book. I'm enjoying it. They might as well. And by pinging someone when they're top of mind like that, you maintain a relationship over time instead of only pinging them when you need something. So, as an example, one of my clients, Kane Minkus, he's super into tech and cameras and stuff. So when I got a new camera, I'm like, dude, Kane, I got this new full frame, blah, blah, blah. And he replies back, cool camera. Hey, I'm doing a promotion with Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank and John Assaraf and these folks. Would you like to be featured in this? And I'm like, I didn't ping him about that. I didn't even know he had that going on. But by staying top of mind and in touch, opportunities just come out of the woodwork. So it's a great way to maintain relationships over time. And I'll be finishing brushing my teeth in the morning and realize I've texted two or three people already just to check in. So it's a great way to maintain relationships over time.
Charles Byrd, this has been amazing. You have great advice across the board. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to the next time that we can talk.
Thanks for having me on, Matt.
Take care. Want more? Click below for extra resources in our podcast vault. We have show summaries, action plans, and information about coaching.